in the avatar of a moderator for this session. So without further ado, we hand the stage over to you.
So thank you so much, Uday. Yes, this is my debut role as a moderator. I'm usually given the task of talking about politicians in India and women politicians in India. But today I'm going to play the role of the moderator and understand how women and the dynamics of their representation in politics is making an impact globally, and how countries, various countries that are represented here on this panel, are, through their policy interventions, moving towards more representation of women in the parliament. So we have the Right Honourable Shivani Raja, who is a member of House of Commons in the UK. We have Ms. Modesta Petrauskaitė, who has already spoken and given her perspective about women representation in Lithuania. She's member of the Seimas in Lithuania. Then we have Madam Deputy Laetitia St. Paul from France. She's member of the National Assembly. We have Senator Adéla Šípová from the Czech Republic. She's a member of the Senate. And we finally have Deputy Marcela Guerra, who we've heard earlier making a very powerful intervention about Mexico and how they have worked towards representation of women. She's the member of Chamber of Deputies. So welcome you all on this panel. So before we deep dive into representation of women, I'd just like to put out a few opening comments. So when we heard y'all speaking earlier, it became very apparent that when women come into politics and into policy making, they're not just representing their constituencies, they're representing communities and towards the economic growth story of their nations, which is more inclusive, which understands the ones which are on the sidelines and takes them along. So when women are absent in legislative, it is not merely a diversity problem, but a governance issue. IPU 2026 global data is very sobering. Women hold 27.5% of parliamentary seats worldwide, up from 11.3% in '95. But at the current rate of growth, we are 75 years away from parity. Only 1 in 7 countries is currently led by a woman. 101 countries have never in their entire political history elected a woman as head of state or the government. You've seen earlier where I think one of our slides showed women representation in India. The 18th Lok Sabha saw 74 women elected to office, which is just 13.6% of total members. The ADR report recently shows that across MPs and MLAs combined, women constitute just 10% of elected representation. But we're moving forward with a positive intervention in our policy dynamics. Now, considering we are at a point, now I'll open this up for the opening comments, considering we are at a point where through policy interventions in various nations, we've seen women's representation increase, I would want you all to begin with opening comments about your countries and how policy interventions have helped for more representation. And in terms of Lithuania, Lithuania does not have any formal policy per se, but the responsibility has been given to the political parties to ensure natural progression of seeing more women representation. So how does this positively work to build more women leadership? And what do you think is the challenge and the right way forward? Starting with you, ma'am.
Good morning. Thank you for your interest in that topic. First of all, I'm convinced that when you only recruit in 50% of the population, you miss 50% of talents in your country. And in France, there is a politic of quotas. So the political parties have penalties if they don't present 50% of women for the constituencies. It's not a proportional election in France. We are elected in our name. But at the end, we only have 36% of women within the French National Assembly. It's much better than before without quotas, but it's not a 50-50. And why? Just because parties propose women when the sociology is obvious that they won't win the election. So at the end, if it's a right constituency, they will put women from left-wing parties and vice versa. And this has quite changed with Emmanuel Macron in 2017. And that's the reason why I'm here talking with you today. He said, I want women in winnable constituencies. And that was the will change plus quotas.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your opening comments. I'll hand it over to you, Right Honourable Ms. Shivani.
Good morning and namaste. There is a saying, and I believe it goes, that democracy is strongest when it represents the people that it, when it reflects, the people that it represents. And, you know, I think we have to acknowledge the progress made for women in politics. In the UK, we have a record number of women sitting MPs in the House of Commons. We have about 264 women MPs at the moment, which is the highest it's ever been. And I think that is, it's good to acknowledge that achievement. But despite progress, you know, in terms of political leadership globally, as you mentioned, there is still a lot of work that needs to be done. I'm really proud to be a member of the Conservative Party. We elected the UK's first female Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher, and my party is currently led by another formidable woman, Kemi Badenoch. And I think it's really valuable for young women in politics like myself to have these female role models. And as you mentioned, Priyanka ji, when a woman enters politics, the agenda broadens. Policies become more balanced, they become more stronger, and they become more grounded in everyday life. You know, all of a sudden, conversations about family, communities, healthcare, they suddenly become a part of everyday policy making, and I think that is a huge asset which women can bring to the table.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the question. So, as I said before, in Lithuania we don't have quotas by the law, but we have quotas in the party. So I am from Social Democrat Party, and we have a quota system for the women, half and half, in all elections. And I think most one of important thing to mention that our party have like a women union. It's really important if we want to educate, take decision maker better, if we want that women vote for women, because the problem in Europe, in India, and a lot of other countries is not that the women not be elected, but women can women no vote for women, and we have this resultation. So we have a system and union in our party, and I think it's work for Lithuania.
Thank you. I'm from Czech Republic, and which is in Europe. But I must say the situation in Czech Republic is not very good from this point of view. Even when Czechoslovakia was one of the first countries in Europe that has had a first woman elected in 1912, even in that situation, this elected woman was not allowed to go inside the parliament. So this was what happened in 1912. And since 1920, we have codified the gender equality in our constitution. But I must say that I'm a very data-based person, and I will tell you some data. We have 33% of women in Chamber of Deputies, and only 20% of women are in Senate. And I am a senator, and I must say that you see it, that this inequality is impacting the law very much. You know, in topics like gender-based violence against women, or, for example, also other reproductive rights, and these topics, this is very difficult to talk about it in Senate, for example. So we never had a prime minister, we never had a president in Czech Republic, and that's, I feel shame of that. We don't have quotas, and I think that quotas would help us solve this problem, especially in political parties, because when there are a lot of men wanting to get power, then they do not allow them to be on the upper position on the candidate list. That's the way how to not allow women to get into politics. And I must say, in Czech Republic, it's really, you can see the inequality, because the university graduates are from 60% are women. So young women in Czech Republic are, more qualified, but they, hit the, I don't know if you say it also, the glass ceiling, and there are not so many women on boards and in decision positions. So this is, I must say, a not good picture of Czech Republic.
Thank you so much. You made a very powerful intervention about century of equality. I think that's such a tremendous statement, and that's why you got applause from the entire audience here. So I just wanted to ask you, where do you think Mexico has started something like parity for everything, which has managed to give you representation, which is almost representative of the demography that exists? So where do you think Mexico has learned from, and what can it teach to the world?
Yeah, thank you. Well, in Mexico, we believe that women are essential to democracy. That's why we changed the constitution. That's why the gender parity is in our constitution. Because we believe, certainly, that is not a rule, but it's a good message of hope. Because women, we represent the 50%, more than 50% of the whole population in my country, in the whole world. And we have the right to participate in our whole decisions. We have the right to try to move forward for the development of our country. And we have so many things to share to do for our country. And we can tell that women still face a discrimination, yes, of course. At all levels, for instance, in work level, for instance, in university sometimes. But we keep going with hope, and we keep going with the struggle, because it's not easy. It's not easy. We have also the agenda, 2030 agenda, and it's a very good road to follow, because the CDG 5, it takes everything there. Everything is there. So we have just to follow, we have just to sing, and we have to be resilient. When a woman are prepared, we became resilient. And the resilient people helps the country. Like in India, for instance. India is a very, very good country of developing, and women are increasing in participating all time. I have been many times in India, and I can say that it's a lot of change, like in Mexico, and that is a true. This is a very, very good thing, because if we have the political will to change the reality, women and men, not only the woman, the men that have the decisions, you have to move forward.
I love the passion with which you speak. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
And I'm saying the men that are in front of us. Thank you.
I must share this with you, that when we were chairing the G20 forum, at that point in time, Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji spoke about women-led development. Earlier, we used to speak about women included in development, but he brought a new paradigm which spoke about women leading this development. So I think that changes the shift of a woman who's wanting to come and participate in the growth story of nations should be leading those changes, not just one of the followers, not just included in the economy, but leading that positive change. However, the common theme that I have seen exist globally is about how barriers are created for women to participate in political leadership or to be at the forefront of being political leaders. Even the IPU report shows that, the 2026 report shows that 76% of women parliamentarians have experienced intimidation or violence against 68% of their male colleagues. Online harassment is now documented as a structural deterrent. It pushes women out before they reach a ballot and silences those who win. What concrete legislative interventions has your country introduced? Do they work? And critically, are the platforms cooperating? What I'd want to understand through this would be that how are we as individuals, women who are at the forefront of this battle, fighting these barriers and trying to bring these barriers down through our policy interventions in the parliaments, in our various parliaments. So we could start with Mexico again.
You mean we have to learn to negotiate. For instance, how can we got that parity? Because we passed in the 90s. In the 90s, we had the quotas. And we start in the quotas inside the political parties. It was very strongly. Oh my God, it was terrible. But we have to with the debate, everyday debate, and trying. And after that, we got a reform inside the party, the political parties. In PRI, I was in the PRI, there was the majority. We had the majority in the government, and we had the majority in the whole states before. And we started with that, and we installed the 30% of the quotas for women. After that, it passed 15 years to improve the amount of quotas, 40%. And then, just 2014, we have more strong women in the Senate. I was there with a lot of colleagues that very, very feminist and good, and we start negotiating with Mr. President and with the whole cabinet first, and on the side of the parties, and with the other colleagues. And we passed to the from the quotas to the parity in 2014, but only for the two chambers, Senate and Deputy chambers. After another years, struggle and everything, we took the equality in everything in 2019. Great. But it was not easy. It was very. But now we have been changing, and the country is better with the presence of women and decisions.
Any lessons that we can take from UK?
Well, I was just listening to that, and I mean, I'm not sure if having policy is the best way for women to get what they want. You know, policy, especially in the UK, is often very long-winded, takes years to come into fruition. And I think as women, we have this inner resilience, and we have learned that if we want something, then we must stand our ground, and we have to fight our way to get it. So you're right, there are perception barriers to women in politics. You know, my constituency was held by a man by men for over a century, actually. So when I entered politics, I immediately was scrutinized differently, I was judged differently, and I think that goes for all women sitting on the panel and women leaders worldwide as well. And that is unfortunately just the way it is. But I think one of the ways we can kind of combat that is just by having more women representation. You know, I don't think the issue is not there is a lack of capable women. The issue is that we need to make politics more welcoming and more appealing for women. And the more women that we have willing to kind of participate in our democracies, the stronger our democracies they would become. And I think we need to, as women currently in politics and in parliament, we need to ensure that we create political systems where women entering politics is normal.
You mentioned that in Czech Republic hasn't seen any women leadership leading the nation and leading the system that you'll have. What do you think is holding it back? What are the challenges?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
You mentioned that Czech Republic hasn't seen any women leaders leading the nation till date. So out of the 101 countries I mentioned, Czech Republic happens to be one of them.
In Czech Republic, women face a lot of barriers, I must say, and one of the things is also we have to help them, we have to encourage them to do the step and want to be a politician, because it's not usual, I must say. Also in my case, everybody in my family was shocked that I would like to be a politician. And Czech women, I think there are more barriers. We face much more hate speeches on social media. We face also being invisible in media. There are not so many women in expert panels, on discussions, on conferences, in media. In the evening, when I look at the television, there are only men on discussion, and I don't like it because for me it's boring. If I don't see a female face on television, it's boring for me. So we have to encourage women. We have to focus on it to have a balanced panels. And one thing what is very difficult for Czech women is that there are only 2% of men taking parental leave and taking care of their children. So women are mostly the people who are taking care of their children, and also about taking care of their parents and husbands' parents. And if you have to stay at home and take care for all these things, then that's normal that you don't have time to be in politics. And these are the barriers for Czech women, and I must say it's very hard to push it somewhere. Even I was nominated by a progressive party. Even in this progressive party, there are no equal conditions to be on the top of the list.
Would you say that similar challenge exists in France and Lithuania? Would you say that? Similar challenges of women being invisibilized, women facing these kind of barriers, the responsibilities of families becoming the discouraging factors for them to be actively engaged in politics? Would you say that about France?
Yes, I totally agree with my colleagues. Being visible is very, very important. For instance, when I was first elected 9 years ago, I was much younger, and people kept asking me, "Oh, to whom are you the assistant?" So when we are going to be more visible, then you escape this kind of questions. And about violence, it's very important, the previous question. It's a tough job being a politician for women, and for men it's quite the same. And with simple laws like what is forbidden offline is forbidden online, we escape many insults. In the everyday life, nobody comes to insult you, to tell you sexist things, but on the social networks, they don't hesitate, so yes. Just don't let them do. And when you fight for our women's rights, I think that it helps all the humanity, and it helps men also.
Since we are running short of time, I just want to wrap it up with one sentence, just one sentence, because we have many young girls who are watching us, listening to us, and our experiences, our lived experiences, and probably in your countries, they would be watching you. What is that one message you would want to give to the women of this country, of your countries, of my country, in terms of their active participation and a need for representation in the parliaments and in policy spaces? One message, one statement, because we are running short of time.
I start. I'm convinced that for everyone, maybe, life closes doors, but we mustn't close the doors by ourselves.
Don't wait until you're ready. If you care about your community, then you already have the best qualification needed for public service.
I would like to say, all women is like a superwoman. So just go and do that.
Absolutely.
I have a message for men, because if you really want to have a real democracy, then you have to help also to women to be involved in politics, because it's the question of justice.
Century of equality.
Equality is not only about numbers. It's about transforming the reality. And we have a commitment to transform the reality for our peoples. Women have to be in. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This was a lovely conversation, and we got to hear experiences from our own lived experiences from various nations. And I'd like to thank NXT for giving us this panel to have a free and fair discussion on how women need to be better represented in times to come. So thank you so much for this lovely conversation. Thank you.
And who better to have this conversation than women parliamentarians themselves, of course, the voices of people from their respective countries. Thank you all very much for that panel. Really enjoyed that. But we are, of course, quickly now shifting our theme. We will come back to Next in Equality shortly. But for now, I want to move on to our segment, Next in Finance. And for Next in Finance, I want to call on stage our next speaker for a keynote address.